thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here in IHP for this trimester. So today I will talk about some application of optimization algorithm to a real problem. And so I will try in two different cases, I will try to show you that we can go from a real application to the resolution of the problem. So the first part of the work has been done within the PhD of Marina Crémé, and the second part of the talk within the PhD of Xuan Vu, and so I'll collaborate with some colleagues in Marseille and in Toulon. So I will briefly introduce the context, but already Christian has done it very nicely, and so I'm interested in solving inverse problems, and so I will focus on two different problems, time frequency plane in painting and tensor factorization, and then I will make some conclusion. So this is a very classical model. We already see it with Rebecca, and so I'm interested in some object, here Y, and I don't have access to this object. I have access only to one observation, Z. And so this system, which I model with d alpha, has some parameters, and I'm really interested in studying these parameters, which kind of noise is in my model, and which kind of linear operators is the convolution, and so on. And so the idea is in a different configuration is to go from here my object of interest, to go from the observation to my object of interest, and here I took some examples I worked on, and as you can see, sometimes the object of interest seems, I mean there is some common points between the observation and the object of interest, and sometimes less. And so the idea here is to retrieve the object of interest. And the question is to know how. And in fact, what we will do is we will formulate our problem under a variational approach. And also, we will have some parameters like regularization parameters, and also the kind of a priori we can make in our problem. And so I'm also interested in studying all these things. So, as I think you understood, I'm interested in solving my inverse problem, and so to do that, I will formulate some optimization problem like this one, and so this problem is formulated under a variational approach or equivalently under a statistical approach, for example, formulating the maximum a posteriori estimation. And so I want to minimize the sum of these two terms. One is the data fidelity term or discrepancy term and so on. And the second one is some regularization term. And in fact, it models some a priori one can have about the object of interest I'm looking in. And so we can have more different versions of these minimization problems. For example, if you don't have only one regularization but several ones, for example, you know that your object is sparse and non-negative. Also, you can have some linear operators involved in this regularization. For example, you want to take into account the wavelet coefficient of your object or the gradient of your object or all these things. And in the last case, sometimes you have a large size inverse problems, or you have block structured problem. And so in this case, you can have some regularization which involves only some blocks of data, and you will process one block after the other. Anyway, all these optimization problems can be solved using some proximal approaches, so it is really not an exhaustive list. But it was just to mention that there is different kind of optimization algorithms, the primal algorithm, the primal dual one, and also the block-based one. And here my objective is to tackle some inverse problems first, looking at the modeling of my problem, and then looking on how can I solve it. So the first problem is time frequency in painting. So, you know, I'm working with images, and I have some colleagues in Marseille who are working in audio, and they told me, okay, you have to work with us because we are looking at some image in painting. I say, oh, image in painting, oh, that's nice. So yes, maybe I can have a look. And it was not really image in painting, it was time frequency playing in painting, because they are a little bit cheating, because they are computing the short time Fourier transform of the audio signal, and they obtain some spectrogram like this one. And so the question is, what is the motivation behind that? Why we want to in-paint this FTFT? So we are working with a company who is making some sound design, and who is working with automobile companies. And so they have different goals. One is, for example, to create some sounds for electric cars. Or also, the other one is, for example, they put a lot of sensors in the cars, and they just register everything when you open the window, when you close the window, and if there is some high frequency, which can be, not comfortable for the driver, so they want to take it and to remove it. And so they like, at first, we like to work with toy example, and it is the first example they show us. So here it is really a toy example, because you can hear the sound of the engine, and in top of this sound you have the bird. And so here in the time frequency place, so the bird is, so you can see here the different frequency of the bird. And so when they want to remove it, so they just take the mouse, they just draw a circle around the different area, and then they just take the rubber, they put this to 0. Then they put the structure which are around this, they fill the hole with that, and with the phases, they put random phases. And so the idea here is to try to propose a better approach to in-paint this missing data. Okay. So here, the problem I'm interested in, so it is an in-painting problem where I have a mask here, M. Y is the FTFT of my audio signal, and what I want to recover is some in-painted spectrogram. But here, I don't want to recover the bird. I want to in-paint the spectrogram with something which look like STFT coefficients. Okay. And so, so when I discuss with my colleague, I do not mention this, but here you see, so I have my data fidelity term, and here I have my a priori, and you can see here this nuclear norm, or we can also take the rank, and so they told me, okay, the STFT is low rank. I say, okay, but why are you saying this? They say, okay, in the literature, we find a lot of things on non-negative matrix factorization of spectrogram, and in this case, they are using low rank assumption of the spectrogram. Okay, so the first question was, okay, is the spectrogram really low rank? Is there any possibility to characterize the low rankness of the spectrogram? So here you have the spectrogram of the glockenspiel sound. So this sound is really simple, and this is how the spectrogram look. And when you see this picture, I have a question for you: what is the rank of this matrix? Okay, is it low rank or high rank? Well, or the rank is equal to 20 or to 10 or. And so, in fact, we really wanted to characterize this. So first, we rewrote the definition of the short-time Fourier transform. So for the STFT, you have two conventions. One convention which is called the bandpass convention, and one convention which is called the low-pass convention. As you can see, it's just, you have a relation between the two, which is this one. It is just the difference between the two, it is just the sense where you are doing the modulation or the translation. So if you do first the modulation and then the translation, you have the first convention. And if you do the inverse, you have the second convention. Of course, if you take the modulus, then you have the equivalence between the two. And so here my windows is denoted by W, and here I process my signal, and my signal here is denoted by S. And what I'm interested in particular is when I have full redundancy. So if you take K equal L equal N, then you have a full redundancy of your STFT. So your matrices S here are very big. They are L times L. And if you want to factorize these matrices, you can rewrite SBP and SLP like this, where E are nothing else than the atom of the Fourier transform. So you can write that. And from this, you can derive two properties. For the bandpass convention, first, if under the assumption that the window is non-vanishing, then the rank of your STFT for the bandpass convention is equal to the L0 norm of S hat, which means that in the bandpass convention, the signals which are low rank are the ones composed with pure complex exponentials. Okay? And for the second convention, so the low-pass convention, you have the same kind of property. This time it's the Fourier transform of the window. If the Fourier transform of the window does not vanish, so in this case, the rank of your STFT for the low-pass convention is equal to the L0 norm of S, which means that for this convention, the matrices which are low rank are the one for which the signals are composed of Dirac. Okay? So when we saw that, we were a little bit disappointed because when you have a real signal, of course, you have the composition of, attack and so Dirac, but also some signals which are which are here from beginning to end at different frequencies. And so this property states that at least it will not be able to have low rank property of your real signal. But what was also interesting is that you will not obtain the same result either you consider the low pass convention or the band pass convention. And at the beginning it was not clear for me, but really this choice of this convention is really important. So here we made some tests. So we took a signal composed of 6 complex sinusoids, and what we obtained, so here we plot the singular value, and what you can see is that for, as expected for SBP, so for the bandpass convention, so the rank of the STFT is exactly equal to 6, and 6 is exactly the number of components I consider. So this is nice, but as you can see also for the low pass convention, we have a higher estimated rank. Okay? And we also plot the rank of the magnitude and what we call the power spectrogram, so the squared magnitude, and you can see that the rank of these are below, in between the rank of the bandpass convention and the low pass convention of the STFT. Okay, and in fact, what you are seeing in the non-negative matrix factorization for audio processing, what they are doing is they are imposing the constraint of low rankness on the modulus, so on the spectrogram, but not directly on the STFT complex coefficient. And also, so we made another test. So we construct signals with a different number of components, so one sinusoid, 2, and so on. And so as expected, so you have here the identity curve. So for the bandpass convention, you have that the rank is equal to the number of components. And for the low pass convention, you have a higher rank. And so here you have some plateau, you see, and we don't have any explanation for this, but but we are working on that, and so it was interesting to see that okay, I mean, imposing a low rankness on the STFT complex coefficient is not necessarily a good idea. Maybe there is other regularizer or a priori that can be found and that can be better. Or maybe, as Rebecca said 2 days ago, we are interested in painting some part of the time frequency plane and not all the time frequency plane, so maybe we can concentrate on some parts individually. Okay. After, we had another question because we want to in-paint the time frequency plane, so we want to in-paint complex coefficient. And so we as a PhD student, Marina Crémé, we think that, okay, maybe we can first assume that we know all the magnitude, and then we maybe test if it is possible to in-paint only the phases, knowing the magnitudes, okay? So this is the problem I formulate here. So I denote my Gabor item by the letter A, and my observation by the vector B, and Bm are the coefficient are fully no. And this sign is to say that it is where I know only the magnitudes and not the phases. And so what I want to solve is this kind of problem. I want to recover my signal, having some observation of the magnitude and sometimes having the observation of the magnitude and the phases. So it is a very classical problem of phase in painting. And what we can, first question one can have is it really important to in-paint the phases? So here I just play again the Glockenspiel. And here, if I have 30% of missing phases and I in-paint this phasing using random phasing painting, this is what I have. So as you can hear, really, we have a high degradation of the sound. So really, we have to do something to do better. And so, of course, the phases are very important because it was only 30% of missing phases. So a first approach we have studied is the well-known Griffin and Lim algorithm. So this algorithm performs alternated projection in the time frequency plane. And so what he's doing, he's iteratively in painting the phases with you see here, we project on the STFT plane, and then we reproject back in the signal plane, and we alternate on this, and we do it several times. And so what we are able to obtain with this algorithm is this reconstruction. Which is already very nice, in fact. So we were quite happy with this, but you know, you can have some problem of convergence of these algorithms, and it worked well because here I have 30 missing phases, but I choose them randomly. But if I have big holes, in this case, it does not work as well as in this case. So we study the SDP method. So one method which was developed for phasing painting is called facelift. And so how is working this approach? So here I just recall the problem I want to solve. So you have two steps. The first one is a lifting step. So if, instead of working on a small x, which is of size L, you will work with XX transpose conjugate, which is of size L times N, L times L. And so you just rewrite your problem from this form to this form, just doing this lifting. And here you see that you want to minimize the rank, and so you can replace the rank by the trace, and this is finally what you obtain. And this problem can be efficiently solved using the TFOX toolbox. And here, as you can see, there is no the icon, you know, with the sound, because the dimension is really huge, and I was not able to launch the simulation of on the Glockenspiel. Okay, so this approach for real audio signal is really prohibitive. And so I also just mentioned here the other approach we consider, which is the phase cut for phase in painting. So it is more or less in the same spirit, but we use another algorithm to solve it. It is here a block coordinate descent algorithm, but you have exactly the same problem of size. And so again, you don't see the icon because I was not able to solve it for the real audio signal. But I was able to solve it for a synthetic signal. So here, we construct a signal which is the sum of three audio signals, so two chirps and a random noise. And so here you see my spectrogram is of size 18 times 32. I think it was more or less the maximum we were able to do. And so we consider two different problems. The first one here on the top is where you have missing phases, but which are only 1 pixel missing, and it was randomly generating in the time frequency plane. And the second case where you can have bigger holes, okay, and you make the width of this hole varying. And so what we are measuring is some errors between the estimated X and the estimated signal and the real signal. So here is the first plot. So when the holes are of width 1 and when they are randomly distributed in the time frequency plane, this is the reconstruction error we can have. So as you can see, for the random phase in painting, it is a blue curve, so the results are not so good. For the Griffin and Lim, so it is the one I made. I was able to compute on my real signal, but as you can see, as soon as I have more than 50% of missing phases, then it becomes to be more unstable and to lead to poor results. And the better result I obtained for the two SDP approaches. Yes. We just impede the phases. And the amplitude is given? Yes. Yeah. The amplitude is given. And the uses? Okay. Yes. And so in this case, so we enlarge the width of the holes, okay, and so we fix the percentage of missing phases to 30%. And as expected, the bigger are the holes, the more difficult is the problem to be solved. And again, when we impede randomly the phases, we obtain very bad results. And with Griffin and Lim, when the hole width is not so huge, again, it is possible to have acceptable results. But again, the SDP approaches leads to better results. Okay, so the conclusion here is that okay, we want to impede the time frequency plane, so magnitude and phases. And so first, the assumption that the STFT complex coefficient are low rank is not really founded for real audio signals. So this is the first point. And the second point is if we assume the magnitude knowns and we want to impede only the phases, already we have some problems with the algorithms that can be used, and the two first approaches we had are really too costly from the algorithmic point of view. Okay. So let me switch to another problem which is completely different. So here I'm not dealing anymore with sound, but with 3D fluorescence spectroscopy. So in this case, I will have 3D images, as you will see. So what I want to study here, so I have some water sample I'm putting in my spectrophotometer. And what is doing this spectrophotometer? So with an excitation wavelength, the spectrophotometer will excite the fluorescence compounds which are present in my sample. And the sample will emit, some fluorescent light recording here. And we call this an emission spectra. And so what we will do is that we will repeat this by exciting the water sample with different wavelengths. And in this case, you obtain what we call a FEM, a fluorescence emission excitation matrix. And so you can obtain this kind of image. And so this image can characterize one compound, okay, the compound of water, the compound of diesel oil, and so on. And so also what you will have different samples, okay, for which you will repeat the same experience. And so you will put all these images into a cube, and so you will obtain this cube of data. So in this problem, I'm interested with this cube of data, and what I want to do is from this cube of data, is it possible to recover the fluorescent compounds which are present in my mixture? Okay? So how can I represent this cube? So this cube is nothing else than the outer product of three quantities: the excitation spectra, the emission spectra, and the concentration. And if you do the outer product and the sum over all the components, then you obtain exactly your cube of data here. So we are interested in doing the polyadic decomposition of this tensor. So here I just represent the two notation which are commonly used. So you can decompose your tensor in function of loading vectors or loading matrices. The two are equivalent. And if you look at the tensor, so that's true that manipulating 3D data or 4D data is not always easy. So what people do is that they express the tensor into a scalar form, or what you can do is also what we call you matricize your tensor. Okay, so for example, you take all your images, and instead of doing a cube, you just put them one next to each other, and you obtain a very big matrices. So this is what we call matricization. And so my objective here is having an observed tensor T. I want to estimate my loading vectors, or equivalently my loading matrices. And so what are the properties I have? So I know that these factors are non-negative because we are dealing with concentration and spectra. But the difficulty is that, as you can see, we have a cube of data, so we have a large task problem. And also, we don't know the rank of this tensor. The rank, in fact, models the number of different components I have in my mixture, and of course, I do not know it in advance. So I have two solutions. The first one is I can launch a first method to pre-estimate this rank, or I can assume that the rank of the tensor is very big, and I hope that I will have an approach which only returns the main, let's say, the main components, and put the other components to be 0. So here, as you can see, my tensor can be a constructor with a block structure, and the different blocks represent the different vector here, or the different matrices. And so in order to retrieve these factors from the tensor, we can formulate this optimization problem where you have the data fidelity term here and different regularization which are accounting from each factors. So in the case of fluorescence spectroscopy, I have 3D data, so here the n is equal to 3. Okay? So the question is, how can I do to solve this? So you can use, for example, the block coordinate variable matrix forward-backward algorithm. So I will not enter into the detail of this algorithm, but it proceeds in the following way. So you will choose randomly one block to be processed. Okay. You compute a preconditioning matrix, and you compute the partial gradient of the data fidelity term. Then you perform a gradient step, a proximal step. All the other blocks keep unchanged, and so you have some stopping criterion. If it is reached, you stop. If not, again, you choose randomly a block, and you repeat this several times. So in my case, so I have to compute the gradient of the data fidelity term. So I will choose it quadratic, and in this case, it is really easy to compute the partial gradient with respect to each component. And as you see, here I took the matricization of my tensor to compute them. And concerning the regularization terms, so as I told you, the only thing I know is that the factors are non-negative, okay? And also, I don't want to pre-estimate the rank. So what I will assume is that I will put a higher rank. I will assume that the rank is high. And I will try to estimate only the main components. And it means that I want to be my loading vector to be sparse, because I want that the non-existing factors are put equal to 0. So all these constraints can be modeled by this function. So you can see that it is a combination of L pi norm and hard constraint imposing the belongings to eta min, eta max. So if here I take these bounds greater than 0, and here if I took pi equal 1, so I will ensure the non-negativity and I will favor the sparsity. So considering the preconditioner matrix, so you have a variant of this algorithm which is called PALM. In this case, the preconditioning matrix is diagonal, and on the diagonal you have the Lipschitz constant of the gradient. But you can also choose other strategies. So here we just took the preconditioner which was proposed by Li Heseng for the non-negative matrix factorization problem, and we expanded to tensor, and this is a kind of preconditioner you can have. And so concerning the computing of the proximity operator, it is really easy because my preconditioning matrix is diagonal, so I have a separable structure, and finally computing the prox is equivalent to project onto eta min, eta max, and to compute the proximity operator of L pi norm. So the prox look like this, okay, with threshold value which are lower than some thresholds. Okay. So let me show you some experiments. So first on simulated data. So my original tensor have a rank equal to 5. So here it is denoted by R bar. And so I simulate some observed tensor T. And I will have two cases. The first one I consider 3D tensor, like in the fluorescence spectroscopy. And I do not add noise. And in the second case, I have 4D tensor. And in this case, I'm adding noise. And I will show you 3 error measures. The first one is a very classical signal-to-noise ratio. And the two other one, so I have two other one measures. The first one here measure the quality of reconstruction of the existing component. Okay. And the second criteria here measure the fact that the non-existing components are put to 0. Because you see, I don't know, yes, you see here, so I made an overestimation, so my real rank is equal to 5, and here I assume that it is equal to 6. So I hope that the 6th component to be 0, and here equal to 7, so I hope the 6th and 7th component to be 0. Okay, so some numerical results. So first, we can, so for the computation time, you can see that the block coordinate approach is quite competitive with other classical approach, especially the fast HALS. And also in terms of error, as you can see here, the second error, which is the error quantifying the non-existing component is very low, which means that we have a good estimation of the spectra, and we have the same conclusion in the two cases. But maybe I can show you some images. It is it is easier to understand. So here are my reference FEM, okay, and these are the FEM estimated by the block coordinate approach, and here by N-way and here by fast HALS. And so what you can see here is that, you know, with the L1 norm, I am able here to remove the phantom component, which is present here for the two other approaches. So this is due to the regularization, okay, to the L1 regularization. And also, we have the same kind of conclusion for the 4D tensor. So in this case, also, we estimate very well the FEM, and you see that the two last ones are also equal to 0, which is nice. And during the 2 last minutes I have, I really want to show you this example because it is a real example. So we had some data which were acquired from urban river. So acquisition were every 3 minutes during 10 days. And so it was leading to a tensor of this size, which is quite high. And so the idea here is to answer to the question, is there any pollution arriving in the river? And we know that at day 7, there will be a pollution by diesel oil, which will arrive. Okay, so the idea here is it possible for me to detect this pollution? So we apply our approach to this set of data, and this is the different FEM we obtain. So here I assume the rank is 4, but I tested on a different rank, 5, 6, and so on, and with our approach it was quite stable, and so which means that the rank may be equal to 4. And what is really interesting is to look at the normalized concentration we have. So here, finally, it's a concentration along time, okay? And so if we concentrate on the block coordinate algorithm, here you can see you have a component which is equal to 0, and here which is growing. We can also make a zoom, so we have, it goes from 0 to a positive value here. And in fact, here it corresponds to day 7. Okay, and so this curve is a green curve, so it's curve number 2, and so number 2 is corresponding to this FEM, and this FEM may correspond to diesel oil. Okay, so this means that with this approach we are able to detect the pollution, and we are able to detect which kind of pollution it is and when the pollution is arriving. So it was very nice to obtain some results on real data. And so some conclusions. So it is really important to have good models for inverse problems, because if not, so you will converge to a solution, but a non-satisfactory solution. And also what is really difficult is to, when we are dealing with simulated data, it is always working, but when dealing with real data, it is never working, but it is difficult for the algorithm to work. And so it is very interesting to study the two. And what is nice also is that we have a lot of tools at our disposal, and learn new tools during this workshop. And so it's interesting to elaborate good algorithms. And what we have to do in future is really we have to implement more efficient methods for the time frequency in painting, because until now we are not able to deal with real audio signal. And also, I do not mention it, but for the real data, for the tensor decomposition, we made some pre-processing, because normally everything is positive, it's non-negative concentration, spectra, and when chemist gives you the data, you have a lot of negative negative values, so you have to make some pre-processings. So I think that instead of doing pre-processing, it could be better to directly include this in the optimization problems. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for this very nice talk. So we have time for a few questions.
I know you're hungry.
So regarding your audio in painting, are you able to characterize the kind of information you have lost when you lose 30% of the phase, apart from what you hear? So that you could put then some a priori into your model to try to better reconstruct it?
It would be nice, but I have no idea of which kind of information we can put. No, I have no idea. And I'm more interested in looking at the full STFT than just the phases. But even for the phases, I have no idea of what we can do. I mean, which kind of a priori. If you have some ideas.
Thank you for your very interesting talk. And I have a question about what is the largest size of the signal that you can, let's say, reasonably handle with a facelift method in your simulation?
You mean with the algorithm of SDP? SDP-based algorithm for the...
Yeah, facelift or face max cut.
Really, I think that so we take 16 per 62, right? I think it was more or less the maximum we were able to process.
Okay.
Because here, so you have 16 times 32, and so when you are doing the lifting, so you have
okay.
t times f square, and
t times f square. Okay.
Yeah, and so we were not able to do really greater than that.
Okay, thank you.
No further question? Well then, I think it's time to have lunch. Thank you very much again for